Hello and welcome to the Nameless Recovery Show. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Estel. And if you're watching this for the first time, the purpose and the mission of this show is to reduce the stigma around addiction and the stigma around recovery. Joining me today is the one, the only, none other than herself, Karen Williams.
Hi, Estel. Glad to be here today. I'm privileged. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to sit down and talk with me.
Sure.
My first question is, professionally, what do you do in the world?
Mm-hmm. What's my job? I am a therapist, a primary therapist and clinical lead for a recovery center in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, Arizona. So I run treatment plans and see clients individually and in group therapy and help them improve their lives.
So you deal with drug addicts a lot.
All the time. Every day. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Never a dull moment.
Truly.
Before you, and you're in recovery yourself.
Correct.
Before you got into recovery, did you know there was recovery? Did you know what an alcoholic was? What did you think prior to entering?
That's a great
this
question.
New chapter of your life?
My opinion at the time was alcoholics were these people that lived either on the street, under viaducts, drinking from brown paper bags. It's, the stigma that's attached to that.
I'm imagining like a cartoon character.
Like a cartoon character, exactly. People that didn't have any means to support themselves. People that were just struggling in life, and that was the lot that was carved out for them. So for sure, I didn't have a clue that there was anything really beyond that in my growing up and in my acquisition of the disease, which I now know to be alcoholism.
And you didn't view yourself as a cartoon person with fingerless gloves and a brown paper bag.
Correct. Something quite different indeed. No, I thought I was kind of a garden variety Michigander. Grew up in downriver Michigan.
Is that the correct terminology?
Michigander? That's what
other Michiganders say?
That is, and we also point to our hand.
I know the hand thing.
Yes.
I'm from here.
So you're from here.
Yeah.
And it's the thumbs over here on this side, and so this is like the Detroit area, and I'm right around there.
Is it a right hand thing? Am I doing it wrong by doing my left?
Correct.
I see.
This is probably like New Jersey or some silly state like that. But this is
Every time I mock Michiganders, I'm always using my left hand because I'm right-handed. Now I know better.
Know.
Next time I try to play a joke or make fun of somebody from Michigan,
there you go.
Glad
I could help.
Way. Thank you.
I help.
Etiquette's important.
Yes, indeed. So we grew up in this. Like everybody did this, and my impression was you eventually grow out of this, and that was my go forward plan.
You grow out of what?
Out of heavy drinking and acting like an idiot.
At what age is this in your world considered acceptable / normal behavior?
Any post diploma 4 to 5 years. That's your break even time.
I could see that.
You got to pay your dues to the keg, and then you should be able to slip into gently and gracefully the new life that's awaiting you. That was the theory.
I think I might be reaching here, but I feel like a lot of people probably think that. And some of them are right.
Right.
And some of them, unfortunately, are wrong.
Right. I would agree. I think there's and there's shame attached to that too. So I should be doing these things, and I should be getting my life in order. And doggone it, I've gone through 4, possibly 5-ish years of college, and I really should be on to the next chapter. But it didn't quite work that way for me.
At what point did you have any idea of what recovery was? Did you know anybody that had gone through hell and then sobered up and lived a totally different way? Did you know anybody like that?
I think from nobody in college, nobody I knew was not drinking. After that, people that I heard were sober were people probably that I just held in a different esteem entirely. So how were they? It was mysterious to me how they could have stopped drinking. Mm-hmm. I heard of programs that were out there to help people. How
did those programs sound to you?
Very scary. There's no way. And it was always, clipped with, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to solve the problem myself. And it's just not now. And if I were to be honest with you and tell you, every single December 31st or January 1st, stopping drinking was on the top of that resolution list. And by day 7, I was already back at it again.
You know when the best time to get sober is? Tomorrow.
Of course.
Tomorrow.
Yes. That was kind of my philosophy. That was kind of my way of thinking then.
I'll make an effort to say that in social circles. We'll see if it picks up.
Right. I'll be with you on that.
Okay, so you didn't really know anything about recovery. You didn't really know anybody in recovery. You were sensing intuitively that maybe something was wrong, but still pretty sure you could fix it yourself. Mm-hmm. When did you actually try
to stop?
Yeah. And did you try and fail?
Yes. So I often heard the term relapse. I hear that now. I position myself doing all of my relapsing prior to my sobriety. I see that now very clearly. But how many times I actually tried to quit on my own, we're into the double digits for sure. And what I really, the last gallant effort on my part was probably, I was in my 30s. I had already had my second child, and I knew I needed to stop. I knew I drank differently than my counterparts in the adult world, and I was very shamed by it. And again, I thought it was all about willpower and personal pressure, and I will power through this. And I had gone successfully 6 months. I adopted a heck of a C's candies addiction at that point as well.
I'm not mad at you about that.
I know, I'm not either. It was a very wonderful part of my life. I was getting it, sort of, but still very large and in charge. And you'd think I would have gained weight, but I was drinking so much that when I did stop that, like a lot of the pudginess wore off. So I was just switching over. But I had been invited to a graduation party back in Iowa. I was living in Phoenix at the time with my family. Invited to my sister-in-law's graduation, and it was an alone trip. So I was going to travel on an airplane by myself. I was fine. I was fine and feeling really good. And it wasn't until I got to the hotel where I was going to stay, and then the invitation to the dinner party, the celebration happened. And I do remember vividly sitting at the table and the glassware and the waitresses coming around offering the red versus the white. And I didn't say no. And I had been 6 months dry at that point. And here's my family, and all the old stuff starts coming back. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like automatic. It returned. I took the red, and I was off to the races. I didn't tell my family back in Arizona until I got there, and that's a whole other story.
So I want to pick apart or unpack something you just said. So you had a little bit of sobriety time, not really recovery, so to speak, any kind of programming or new disciplines. Just were being a good girl and not drinking.
Yes.
You're 6 months sober. You're at this. You've flown back home. They're about to pour the wine, and you mentioned all this stuff with the family. You're back in your family of origin environment. Mm-hmm. So, and not to. First of all, I don't know if your childhood was traumatic or if it was not traumatic, but I do know people, and I know that most people have generally dysfunctional families to some degree or other. Some are downright horrible, right. But most, by and large, are a little screwy at best. Mm-hmm. So now, stepping out of your story as a clinician, as somebody who works with newly sober alcoholics and drug addicts trying to straighten out their lives every day, how significant is the combination of you back in your family system while attempting to stay sober with no real tools?
Oh, boy. Well, I was a sitting duck, as I would look at that now as an analyst.
Yeah.
And so, good question. As I reviewed my steps in becoming an alcoholic, it started super early for me. So that table experience with the glassware was a setup in my mind. Thanksgiving And I was probably 6 years old when I had my first remembrance of alcohol entering my body. And I remember it, and I can remember thinking how good it felt going down. And I can remember, again, the pretty glassware and what it looked like, and that instant connection. So when I was there at that table, you could have some fun with that as a psychological experiment, but that was a setup. I mean, I was completely powerless. I just didn't know it. Mm-hmm. So that's why the automatic response. That's why there was no thought. The shame that we attach to that stuff that you have no power over. I didn't understand that either. But why I attach shame to that when you have no power. I had to make some peace around that as I grew in my knowledge and in my new way of living mm-hmm. as a sober adult. So.
Well, and that's good stuff. It's still surprising to me, and part of the reason that mm-hmm. we're even doing this show is for that very reason. It blows my mind, I should say, how many people still view addiction / alcoholism, which just wrap that in the same basket. Mm-hmm. Still view addiction as anything other than a disease. I know it looks like selfishness. I know it's heartbreaking. I know it's a goddamn nightmare for everyone whose lives touch the suffering person. But we've got so much medical, psychiatric, and behavioral healthcare data around this. Yeah. American Medical Association 60 plus years ago called it a disease and illness, and it's been a part of all 5 DSMs. Right. So there's a metric ton of data explicitly describing and articulating, with further iteration over the years, the type of disease, the type of terminal illness this is, and yet that we carry a lot of shame around it. Like, if I had cancer, I wouldn't be like, oh, nobody can know I have cancer. I'm just gonna pretend like everything's fine. I'm gonna figure this out on my own. I don't need any help with it. Yeah.
No, we would never.
No.
And diabetes, same way. Any kind of cardiovascular, no. We harness our best resources around us. We put together a team of professionals and friends and spiritual helpers to be with us, and we don't carry shame around that. It is, to me, a foregone conclusion that the thing that I carry with me, these negative core beliefs that also pop up as the bad seeds, and how we kind of form ourselves around them. But I should be able to handle my liquor. I should be able to drink like a lady or gentleman for the people that are, on both sides. We should be able to handle this, that we should be able to get rid of it also. It's a mythology that doesn't play and can keep people stuck for a really long time. So I think your idea in having this symposium, this discussion active right now is huge, because there are people out there that are staying away from good help because of that stigma and because of that shame that's permeated our society, permeated our culture, our communities, and our families.
I just read a study last night of 1 million of the several million that did not get help, treatment of any kind for substance use disorders last year, not last year, 2018, so 2 years ago. So that was the data I was looking at. So there's a subset of people who did not get help. And of the million that they were able to have contact with, gather some data on, 44%, so 440,000 of those people did not get treatment because they were afraid to, because of stigma.
Wow, that's shocking. And so sad and unnecessary.
Yeah, and we're losing another alcoholic or drug addict every 4 minutes, 3.6 minutes.
And now the drugs are even more powerful than they ever have been. We're living in a society now where a person who's only been addicted for a very short amount of time, and they may still be in denial about their addiction, can overdose in the drop of a hat.
Don't even have their fingerless gloves yet.
Correct.
All right, so that was your first shot. Were there many attempts at recovery? And we don't need to necessarily go into all of them, but
yeah, the one that I described.
Did you get sober the next time?
Yeah, the miraculous thing about it for me was I did go back out. I stayed out after that experience with the Iowa graduation party. I came back. I was welcomed into my family almost unregrettably, and sort of a relief, like, oh, she'll just be able to control the drinking this time. Like there was a revision in the way that I should have been. I remember that kind of being a thing. And I stayed out again until I got into as much, if not more, misery each successive attempt. So it was like I knew I could stop for 6 months. So that was like the mission, the time frame to beat in every subsequent attempt.
That's kind of a danger. It's like a gambler winning like their first try at blackjack.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like,
and then it becomes safety net there.
And then it becomes even, then of course the shame piles up. You can't do it. I guess my onset of finally getting it ended up in a therapist's office. We can go into that story. I can tell you about the bitter end of the drinking that way. But I couldn't stand therapists, so it's kind of a little irony that I actually became one later on. But I had reached the end of the limit as far as spiritual directors, psychologists, mental health professionals, and good friends who were kind of babysitting me through this, Karen trying to stop drinking on her own thing. So I ended up in this woman's office, and she was a referral from my pastor at my church. And I took it on good authority to go visit her. Lied all over the intake forms, still the shame. Mm-hmm. I told her I think I was drinking about a couple of glasses of wine per week. I was going through some personal business, and so she made the recommendation, and a fine one at that I stop drinking for the period of time that I was in treatment, that I was in therapy, which I thought was unthinkable. Because that was my coping and my...
Was it longer than 6 months?
She only told me to give it up for 90 days. But I'm a good Catholic. So it was right around the beginning of Lent. Good timing. So I thought, and I've given it up for Lent before, right? Like that, surely... How long
is Lent?
Lent...
Like 2 weeks?
Lent is 40 days.
It's 40 days. Okay, so It's like 6 weeks.
And 40 nights. Altogether. Yes. So, but doable. And I've done it in the past. But this time the stakes were higher. I was in a lot of emotional turmoil, so I couldn't ante it myself through that. And I think I made it a total of 3 days, and then began to show up in my therapy appointments lying the whole time about that. So more shame and more guilt and more non-progress. So what I had done, so this was about in a period of time from February until about May, going weekly to this woman trying to help me. And then I finally had an event that was a singular...
I'd love to read her notes.
And we're friends to this day. We're actually colleagues to this day. She refers people to me, which is a great ending to this. But finally, it was starting to near the end and reach the full blister in my life that it was. And I'd gotten into a pretty bad argument with a loved one, and that was probably the thing. And it was on a golf course, and that whole sordid affair took place. I came home. I poured out again for the umpteenth time all of the alcohol in the house. I think I've poured more alcohol down the drain than I've consumed, which is another feat in and of itself. And then went back into the therapist's office and declared myself a person with a problem, still not able to call myself a full alcoholic. But she told me about a program, and that I might want to check out a particular area in the valley, and let her know how that works out. So it was a full 30 days of more controlled stopping. I adopted a Sharps and O'Doul's addiction in that time, figuring that also was a way to stop drinking.
I'm trying not to judge you right now. O'Doul's is gross.
O'Doul's and Sharps, yeah, they're.
I don't know anything about Sharps.
No, I mean, growing up in Michigan, we had.
It's other near beer.
Yeah.
Stuff's gross.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Which is strange because I like beer.
Right, but
I like imported beer, but non-alcoholic beer tastes terrible.
It's a horse of a different color. And it's so would not recommend.
There's something that they've done wrong in the formula.
Yes, I agree. So don't try it if you're considering. That doesn't count. You'll still be drunk and miserable. So anyway, after all of that, I did finally enter into my sobriety, and I didn't look back after that. I don't consider myself special or uniquely informed. I just figured that's the path that I was able to go on, and I have not had a drink since June 12th of 2005.
Wow!
Thanks be to God.
Congratulations!
Thank you
on not just recovery, but on your new life.
Thank you.
And recovery has given you.
Thank you.
So then, what does recovery look like for you now? Is it hard? Is it every day is painstaking, white knuckling it? What is recovery like today at 14 plus years of recovery?
Boy, I don't think about drinking, and that's truly miraculous for this alcoholic. I don't have the mental obsession and the craving. It's lifted. And people often ask me, like, well, when did that happen? Like, what can I look for? Like, is that a 3-month thing? Is it a 6-month thing? And in my view, in my experience, it was somewhere to me around the 6 to 9 month watermark where I finally was able to look back and say, there was a day that went by that I didn't think about drinking. Like, it took that long. To me, that's a bit of a long time, but I also drank my entire life since I was, up until age 39.
Mine was similar. Mine was between the 6 and 7 month mark. Yeah.
Yeah, where I just I turned around and looked. It's like I didn't even think about it. Like that was huge for me. Today in recovery and in my life, I love my life. I lost myself spiritually, and I don't. It's hard to talk about this without getting emotional, but
that's okay. You just let it fly.
Thank you. I'm in touch with my feelings. Good therapist. I do like therapists now these days, by the way, just so you know.
Therapists are great.
Yes, they are. They're great people. But that, everything that we've got a fellow that works over the place that I work, and he's always talking about live the life of your wildest dreams, and he's wonderful, and I'm motivated by the folks I work with. They're fantastic, every single one of them. But it's true, like I'm living that life, and God made that possible for me to experience that life. And oddly, it was always in my mind that I knew I wanted that, and that I had the potential to do that. I just didn't know how to do that. And how I learned how to do that was unique and fascinating, and something that I keep going back to. So in the beginning, where it felt like drudgery and pain and torture to have to do the things that things were recommended for me, are delights to me today. I love my job. To hear those words emerge from this mouth, that was anathema.
What was that word?
Anathema.
Can you please define that for us?
A mystery, something counterintuitive to the extreme. And to me now, I look at there's a lot of things like that. There's really, I don't know where the limit is, and but I can't wait to find out, and I keep pressing the envelope. So life has truly taken on new meaning, and I walk a different way, chest out, chin up, nose to the grindstone most days, and then other times it's like, the random inner child gets to play, and I really truly know what fun can be. So it's a constant exploration. It's a spiritual enterprise of the highest order. And my work and the people that are in it are blessings, truly blessings.
So let's take a quick detour. I don't know how close any of you have been paying attention, but Karen uses really big fucking words. So I'm really impressed with your vocabulary and vernacular, the way they layer together very nicely.
There's a nice word right there.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
How, if you even know, has your vocabulary expanded to the current extent that it's at? How does one develop and use in context such a broad scope of of verbiage.
I'll tell you
You got
what.
a real command of the English language, lady. It's good.
It might be a Michigan thing, because I know you share the same space that I do in this.
I'm not from Michigan.
Well, you spent time in the Midwest. Let's just put it that way. This is Missouri M words. We'll go with that. We'll go with the M stated.
It's geographic?
It could be. It could be.
Okay.
I don't know, but I tell you, the amount of fakery that there was and fraud that there was in my life prior to getting sober, one of the things that I think I did encounter was an okay to be me type of a thing, and I don't have to pretend at that today. So it's kind of like a direct shot and a heavier footprint and a way that I choose to live in the world. So yeah, I love words. I love words.
Do you pick those up in your
reading?
reading?
Here's what I do.
You sit around and Google this stuff at night?
Here's what I do. I'm an analyst by nature. And I think that's kind of why I love psychology so much and working with people, because they're the ultimate puzzle, right? But words mean things. And I like to look into the deeper meaning of things. So when I hear a word, for instance, I'll give you one. Okay. Vulnerable. If you were to ask guy on the street, gal on the street what that word means, what do you think you're going to get back? I'll ask you.
To me, vulnerability means I am laid bare, unprotected.
Right. Good shot. Yeah, that's the essence of it, right?
My tender underbelly is shown without my heavy armor to protect it.
That's right.
I'm like thinking, National Geographic right now.
Correct. So to be vulnerable, when you do that, you're going to be in an unprotected environment, or would you rather be in one that's a little more safeguarded?
Yeah, I'd like to do it with the door shut and locked, please.
Exactly. Yeah. With safe people. Mm-hmm. So this word took on kind of I explored it. I was curious. I like Latin, so there's part of the answer here, but I always go to the Latin derivatives because Latin is a dead language. You cannot vernacularize it. You cannot make stuff up about it. It's no longer used, so it's sort of protected in its own little earthy way. So when I looked up the word vulnerable and found the Latin root, it says from the wound. So the vulnera part of that actually means wound. So of course that's why we're protective. When we're exposing that sensitive area and showing it, we have to be careful. When we share between people and I show you my wound and you're a safe person for me, we can connect and the intimacy in that grows. So believe me, that's huge, right? Humility is another huge word. Principal words are just like, they are delicious.
Yes. That's exactly what I was looking for.
I have a cross addiction now to Latin, just so you know. So
excellent.
Yes.
Well, I might have to look some of my favorite words up and see what the Latin roots are.
There you go.
Okay. What do you do? You've been sober a long time. You're at a party or a wedding or somewhere normal at some type of an event, and you're standing there not drinking, and somebody asks you, "Hey, how come you're not drinking?" What do you say?
Today?
Yeah. If this wasn't my office, if we were at sushi and the lights were down and people were hanging out and somebody was like, "Hi, how come you're not drinking? This is like, the booze is free here," or whatever. If we're in that setting,
yeah.
What do you say?
The shock. It would probably not be a plausible or pleasant sight to see me on this table dancing with my clothes off, or
I think that's going to be subjective to whoever you say that to.
This would not bode well for me or for the people in that room. Let's just put it that way. So, a different answer that I would have provided probably 14 years ago. But
what would you have said 14 years ago?
I would have probably called my sponsor and asked, "What do you do in that situation?" Maybe used an answer somewhere in the vicinity of I'm the designated driver tonight.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yep, and I have an important coffee date in the morning. I want to be on my game and alert. no thank you. And I would have left the scene and been very nervous, and my palms would have been sweating over that conversation.
Does it make you nervous today?
And I would have said I would have had book club to go to the next day too.
Book club.
That technically works too.
Does it make you nervous today?
Nervous today? No. No, today you know what I do now is I think that person asking that question is interesting to me. Like, why would that person be motivated to ask me that? That's, again, the analyst inside.
Why are you interested in why I'm not consuming alcohol?
Yeah, throw it back on. And
it is a little strange.
Yeah.
But it happens. It comes up. Non-drinkers are asked in drinking scenarios, why not?
Correct. Well, and look at everything now. I read an article recently. It was geared towards women, and it was all the ways now that women drink at everything. So baby showers, it's a drink fest.
Mimosas. Brunch.
Yes. Halloween.
Bloody Marys.
Notice Halloween parties. Like when I was a kid, growing up in Michigan, there were no adults accompanying us anywhere. There was like Devil's Night the night before, and we would go out and trash the neighborhood. And then there was Halloween night the next night. And
I have never engaged in anything with my parents or anyone from my family of origin on a Halloween in all my 42 years of life.
No, right? I know.
On the flip side, up until my recovery, I think I was drunk, stoned, loaded, out of my mind since like elementary school days on Halloween.
So it's our
Halloween's always been a favorite.
It's our generation that I think brought this notion front and center. We party right along with the kids. So I got to dress up like the cocktail waitress with my whatever else I can squeeze myself into and drink. And it's a block party. And so
you're literally describing my Halloween pretty recently. They like shut off the cul-de-sac I live in the suburbs. They shut off the street, and there's the big old booze party.
Exactly.
And all of us adults are dressed up, and the kids are dressed up, and we just sit out buckets of candy, so none of us have to sit at our houses.
So we don't even have to participate.
And we just all kids come down and hey, hit it up, get the candy.
Right.
I don't obviously drink.
Right.
I'm just eating the pizza and hanging out and joking with the kids.
But I'm astonished at the amount of Go Cups that I see walking around the neighborhood. And the kids are, So anyway, it's an interesting phenomenon. So there's that. There's Super Bowl. So this
Super Bowl,
alcohol is it's a phenomenon, and it's reached epic proportions, I think, in our culture. And again, where is the line? Where is the limit on that? I don't know, but it does. It's an enterprise that I think we're not done with, and we're just going to be continuing to see a lot of addiction as it goes forward.
What do you do to stay lined up, so to speak, in your recovery disciplines when you're traveling?
Traveling. I usually search out, go online, and Google the meetings that are going to be near me. I do maintain a level of my sobriety wherever I go, so I have to advance plan. I just don't think that stuff is going to occur out of the ether. So I do plan, and I actually like going and visiting places that I don't know and meeting other people like me that are doing their thing, and it's a lot of fun that way. As far as my daily practices, I am highly connected spiritually. I pray morning and night. I have a routine. I have a formula, so to speak. But I also like to be of service, and I find that that's an essential part of my walk, my design, is being of service to other people. So taking the time. I also love hanging around the people that I do hang around now. Because we engage in life in a way that's unprecedented. There's, all sorts of clubs and things that you can join, that you can belong to. I have a hiking group. I have a motorcycle group. Oh, another gift of sobriety. As I ride a motorcycle, got a license late in life, got my endorsement, and I hang around with a lot of people that thankfully do not drink and drive on those kinds of machines, but that's a riot too. So I have a lot of fun.
When I'm working with a new person, let's say I meet a new addict or alcoholic who's struggling, wants to get into recovery, and we're having our first, second, or third sit-down face-to-face conversation, I can see by their curiosity, their willingness, and their honesty level, wherever that's at, roughly how much work it'll take for them to have a similar experience that everyone who's had the experience I'm talking about in recovery, for him to have that same experience. But they don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're somehow completely different for fill in the blank reason.
Mm-hmm.
How do you convince a new person who wants this, needs this, but doesn't believe that their life can change?
Great question.
It's a tough question.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure I have the answer. I just want to pick your brain.
I find less is more. I've heard this expression oftentimes. You know, we meet people where they are, and you do, and that person is me. So I keep that in my mind when I'm speaking with a newcomer, with a person who's new to recovery, knowing that it took me up to 39 to get to that place, and I didn't have like an earth-shattering experience. I didn't get to that place. I didn't even collect any DUIs, though I was definitely a candidate for collecting DUIs. But I had reached the end of a tether, and I didn't want to go anymore. So I speak from my own experience. It's the only narrative I have. It's my truth. It's my story. And I share that. And I share that. That vulnerable word, that's it. And we have a conversation. We just have a conversation. I find people are a little bit tight-lipped about things until they start to trust. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, there's a lot there not to trust when you're an addict alcoholic. You don't trust your world. You don't trust yourself. So how are you going to trust this person, this man or woman sitting in front of you claiming all of these things, and you don't even know them, and you haven't even been around them? It's a hard sell for sure. The other thing I do is I pray a lot, and I just pray help me be of service. Help me to encounter people that suffer and find me useful in their life, so that new person can just feel like they can relax. They may not get it right away. I also think this too, it's common that people will experiment. They'll put their toe in, then they'll pull it back out. They'll do this strange hokey pokey for a while. They're getting to know what this is all about. They're trying. But I think the thing is, I'm there to carry a message to them. I'm there simply to show another person this is a possibility. This is what can happen if you just do this much amount of time. Maybe it's just an hour. Maybe this person can't even set down a drink for an hour. Maybe just try going an hour. How about a half day?
And you do work like this outside of your career.
Mm-hmm. I do.
In your spare time.
I do. I can't keep the level of my recovery going unless I share that with other people, and that is
for free and for fun.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yep.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're pretty cool, Karen.
Thanks, Estel.
There are still a ton of people in the world, for one reason or another, don't view addiction the same as they do heart disease or HIV or anything like that. Mm. What, if anything, and this is a tough question, there's no easy answers for this, at least in my mind, but I think it's worth discussion. What do you think can, could, should, needs to happen to really change that?
Well, you're doing it. More discussion, more conversation, more education in schools, more students, more university populations embracing. I was visiting a local college in our neck of the woods recently, and with the possibility of bringing a message there, and working with the faculty in the psychology department to talk to students that are struggling. That was based upon my experience and my counterpart who was with me, where we found addiction, where it found us. So having the common sense dialogue about it, taking the shame away from it. When shame is exposed to light, it diminishes. And so I think that the more that we can bring it out of the closet and look at it and see it for what it is, what it's doing to our sons, our daughters, our mothers, our aunts, our best friends, we have to start raising the bar. We have to start reaching out and getting out of the shame. So I guess we just keep showing up and saying yes and puzzling over it and dealing with the hard issues.
I love the old 12-step joke. The child is on the beach, the low tide in the morning, and all the starfish are suffocating in the air. They're drying out, and the child is tossing them back in the water one at a time, and the grown-up walks by and says, what you're doing doesn't matter. There's so many of them. And the child picks one up, looks at the grown-up, tosses it in the water, and says, it did to that one. And I think about that, and it warms my heart and helps me sleep better at night and feel better about the human race to know that there are people like you out there in the world tossing starfish back in the water.
I love that.
If there's somebody watching this that's struggling right now watching this, what would you say? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, hang on, there's hope. Don't give up on yourself. Talk to somebody. Reach out. Just say, help me. And I would say to those who are on the receiving end of that, just listen and find a way in. Keep the dialogue going. But there's nothing that you've done, there's nothing that you could possibly say that some other human being that struggles in this way would not understand. You are more numerous out there than you realize. We're here. We're everywhere. We're on every continent. We're in every city. We're in every community. And there are people that are right around the corner. Just ask.
Karen, thank you for sitting and talking with me today.
Thanks for having me.